Hello, my sober lovelies. Before we dive in, I'm really excited to announce my group coaching program for women is live, and you can join now. So excited for this because let's be real here. Quitting drinking isn't just about saying no to the glass of wine or booze. It's about what comes after. All the fear, the boredom, the late night anxiety, and the stories you've been telling yourself for years. And that's where my Rewired Sober group coaching program for women comes in. It's only $247. I'm being totally transparent on the price. It's for 3 months, and you'll learn how to shift your mindset, build habits that actually stick, and question the core beliefs that have been keeping you stuck, and find healthier ways to deal with that loneliness and that now what feeling. The best part is you don't have to do it alone. We'll have live group coaching sessions weekly, and there'll be a bunch of women walking through it with you. It's not another cookie cutter sobriety program for mommy vloggers. It's neuroscience meets real life, and it's designed for women to help you not just stay sober, but actually feel good living sober. You can join anytime, and I'd love to see you on the inside. So start today, get instant access. The link's in the show notes. Hey there, and welcome to You've Been Selected. I'm your host, Kate Vitella, and something tells me you didn't just stumble across this podcast by accident. Maybe, just maybe, you've been called here, like selected by the universe for something more. So let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of You've Been Selected. Today, I have an amazing guest I'm really excited about, Marsha Vanwynsberghe. She is an NLP trainer, author, speaker, podcaster, and boutique publisher. She is the 6-time best-selling author of When She Stopped Asking Why. She shares her lessons as a parent who dealt with teen substance abuse, which is where her journey and business began. Through her tools, outspoken NLP coaching certification, Write Your Damn Book mastermind coaching programs, and Own Your Choices, Own Your Life podcast, Marsha teaches people how to reframe and reprogram their thoughts, beliefs, and stories to become outspoken global thought leaders. Welcome, Marsha.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, Kate.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. So we have, mutual friends in the podcasting world, and that's sort of how we got introduced. And I've been listening to your podcast because you're so much farther down the line in terms of your experience. And you're on episode 1000 something, and I'm on episode like 20. So I'm like, oh, what can I learn from her?
Oh, I love that you listened to it, and not 1,000 yet, but we're getting there. But you know what? Like I can't remember the numbers. I think less than 7% continue after episode 21. So
Oh, gosh.
very, very few continue. And I think there's like if you think of all, I don't know what the number is for people who've started a podcast, but there's like 3 million active podcasts out there, which is not really that much when you think about like global worldwide. So very, very few continue past episode 21.
I wonder what it is about 21. I mean,
Yeah.
I just recorded episode 21, and I think what my perspective is that's the part when you've told all the obvious stories, you've reached out to all the obvious guests, you've put a lot of work into it, and yet you see very little return in terms of engagement, especially if you're a nobody like me coming in. If I was a famous person, that's one thing. And me coming in as Kate Vitella, I'm relatively unknown. That's tough. And you look at the numbers of your downloads, and you look at your, responses to Instagram, or even, your own friends, and they're like, "What? You have a podcast?" And that's the part where it's like, I'm exhausted, and yet no one knows I exist.
Mm. I think you nailed something there. And I think when people reach out and ask me about podcasting, then a lot of times I just say like it's a long game. It's a really
Yeah.
long game. And it can serve you more than the downloads and the episodes and the reach in so many different ways. Like it is a great way to build confidence in your voice and your message. And I'm still connecting with people that, all of a sudden will come out and they'll say, I've been listening to it for over a year, but have never said a word. Like you end up with people who will become your silent listeners, but they don't say anything until something prompts in them to be able to connect. And so it can be, I don't want to say thankless because it's not that, but in the beginning it feels that way because it's like, is anyone listening? I have no idea.
Yes.
You can't, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like, yeah.
Yeah, the analytics are bad, and yeah, it's a lot of work. It's way more work than it looks like,
Oh, yeah.
and I try to tell myself, in a sense, though, this'll be like my legacy. Like maybe I'll never write my memoir, but
Mhm.
this will live on somewhere in the interwebs,
Love
on the
that.
cloud, somewhere. This
Yeah.
will be bits and pieces of my story. And I think over the course of time that I run this podcast, which I plan on doing the long game, when
Yeah.
I commit to something, like I don't fuck around. And so
Right.
I'm in it for the long haul, and I think over time it'll be a collection of stories of my life and of my interactions with others, and so, yeah,
Mm.
I'm definitely committed to keep going, but I can see why it's tough, for sure.
It is. You just gave me a glimpse of it being almost like a diary. Like, I think of self through the journey, and there's, points you're gonna listen to it. I go back and listen, I'm like, "Wow, I've changed a lot since then."
Yeah,
Like, and that's okay, it's good, right? But it is
yeah,
fun because it's like a diary. You're keeping a diary of your voice and your message, and my podcast, most people who listen to it regularly know, like, that's where I share what I'm walking through. I'll
yeah,
share that. That's the most authentic part I'm authentic on social media, but I'm really like my podcast is like, let's just be real. And
yeah.
so it's a beautiful way, but you also do get to document that journey and get to see what that growth has been like.
Yeah, yeah, I sort of think of Instagram like that. It's kind of like my little online diary, and although engagement is important, and yes, I look at followers and I do try to engage with comments, I do go down those rabbit holes. I try to remind myself, like, this is kind of my virtual diary, and I
Yeah.
get to see over the years, especially through recovery, like, whoa, that's Kate at 2 years sober when she thought she knew everything. That's Kate at 4 years when the world was just opening up for her. I mean, yeah, it's like it's cool. In a sense, it's like, I mean, I may never write my memoir, and so that's what I have to offer the world. So
I love that.
so when it comes to your podcast, I was listening to the Own Your Choices, Own Your Life podcast, I think a couple of days ago. I was driving. Let's get to the part where you started to build who you are.
Mhm. Mm. So I love this question. I actually, as a parent who dealt with teen substance abuse, it kind of came out of left field. And when you have those kinds of stories, there's a lot of, shame, judgment, criticism that go with it. And I found myself in this space of hiding from the world. But at the same time, I was actively looking for solutions. Like I was not the parent whose head was in the sand. And no offense to it, just I was not that wasn't me. I was like turning over every rock I could find. Like, where are the
Yes.
answers? What do I do next? And that was my priority. That required a lot of resilience and almost like muscle, like muscling your way through. I didn't
Yes.
really give myself a lot of time to stop and feel. I also come from the generation where it's like suck it up and move on. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that has been taken a lot of time to unlearn that and rewire. It really has. And so that was kind of where I started was actively pushing it out there and sharing and putting the message. And I did that in really small, safe containers first. I was in, they brought us in to speak at the school with some other parents who were struggling. And that's when we started to recognize like there's a lot of people who are experiencing this, but nobody's talking about it. So I was sharing and sharing and sharing and trying. And I think for me, like I've had a number of different breaking points, but I do remember, one real breaking point. of having my checklist, being the type A perfectionist that I was, of all the things I was supposed to do. The counselor told me all the things to do, and I've checked it off like I've, gold star. And she's like, yeah, good job. And I'm like, but I still have the problem. Like, I don't understand. I did what you said and it's not working. And I remember her saying, because it's not your problem to solve. And that was a moment that I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, what do you mean it's not my problem to solve? I think as a parent and as a mother, you believe that you signed this unwritten contract somewhere that you are responsible for everything that's happening in your home to your kids. It's your job to make it easier for them. And I don't think that's actually what our job is. I think our job is to support them as they're experiencing life. But that was a really big breaking point for me because I couldn't get my head around, what do you mean that there's nothing more that I can do? And that was a moment where she said, if they come back to you, you need to be a springboard in their life. And you couldn't support anyone else right now if you wanted to. And you know that. And she was right. So how can you start to take some action to take care of you? And when you're in a thick story like this, it feels weird and selfish to be like, take care of me. Like, look at what's happening. I don't have time to take care of me, but it's exactly what I had to do. It's actually what I needed to do so that I could support myself to be able to handle the situation differently.
Yeah. How long have you been coaching and in your business?
So I've actually been in my business right now 5 years full time, like full time. And I actually, up until 2020, was a registered kinesiologist. So I was actually working with clients post physical rehab. And they sound like two totally different fields, but they are not. And it's taken me a long time to recognize that no, I've been actually coaching for, you know, 33 years clients, because when I was in physical rehab, I would take clients and I'd be like, okay, we're going to go do this. And you could see them almost flinch. And I'm like, we haven't picked up anything. We haven't done anything. And you completely contracted and flinched. And it's because fear takes over, right? Fear is running the show. That's in our subconscious mind. It's running the show. And when you are living with challenges or a physical injury that you're rehabbing, when you're living with stories that are outside of your control, we're always playing worst case scenario. And that is, it doesn't help us because we can't prepare for the difficult decisions that we have to make day in or day out. So I've been coaching for, I would say, 33 years now.
Amazing. I love that reframe because I've been a nurse for 23 years and I've been business as a coach for 2. But when it comes to coaching humans, talking to people, educating people, oh my, that's 23 years.
Mhm. Of course.
Um, so yeah, so I do like that reframe because as a nurse, I talk to people for a living. But in the podcast that you recorded on your breaking point, I think you were specifically talking about maybe your business or the way that you were running things at the time. And one of the things that struck me about it, because there's a million ways we can reach our breaking point, whether it has to do with addiction or, our marriage or our personal life or our business. But you said it's the part where I became sort of willing to start listening.
Mhm.
And the breaking point became like it broke you open. And I thought about that in terms of how I work with clients. One of the things that's in my pillars, and it's shameless plug in the journal that's going to be linked in the bio by the time this episode's out, is like willingness is just that little crack in the door. It's just that little part that says maybe there's another way to do it. Maybe you're willing to listen to a conversation or rethink this. And that's kind of what I gathered. So I was hoping you would unpack what you were thinking when you recorded that episode.
I think I know which one that was. But what it made me think of is like there was a breaking point. I think in 2022, I had built my business to a point that, whatever, a 6 figure, whatever you want to call it. And I built it, but I remember it was like, this is not what I wanted. This is not the business that I wanted. This is not This isn't the work that I wanted to do. I think I've actually built somebody else's business. And that can happen, especially when you're working with coaches. Sometimes coaches will give you the answer. And some of the work that we do with NLP and subconscious work is like helping the client find their answer. Don't tell them the answer. They have to find their answer because we want them to be able to think for themselves. And so there was a turning point where I was like, okay, I had reached what I thought was the goal, except I was miserable. It was like, it was not the business that I wanted. It wasn't the work that I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. And I was still in the space of, 2 years post pandemic starting. My career was gone. So I did a 27-year career that was changing completely at age 50 in the spot and the moment. And I didn't know who I was. It was such a weird time because I was like, I can't figure this out and nothing felt solid. So I built this business, I had the success, and I was like, if I'm going to be true with myself and be honest, this is not what I wanted. This isn't light me up. Like I don't want to just build a job. I don't want to build sales and money. I actually want to make a difference. And so in the beginning of 2023, I actually turned down and closed a lot of the parts of my business. And all of a sudden, all of my ways of making revenue had changed completely. And I felt like I was starting over. And it was so scary and so uncertain, and it didn't feel good. Nothing in it did. But we have to hit those points. I think, well, no, we don't have to. But hitting those points and being honest with ourselves is when we can really recognize, like, this isn't working. This is not what I want. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you failed. I actually think it's worse to keep pushing through something that you don't want. Like it's
Yeah.
so in that process, that's what happened. I literally broke it down and it's all going. And I refunded clients and I canceled things. And I'm like, what do you want to do? Like, what is it that you want to create? What do you want to do? And that was the year that I really started to create my coaching certification and really bring the tools of NLP in. I built a manual. You need space to create the things you're here to create. And if you are a
Absolutely.
person I've always just push, do more, add more on the calendar, there's no space to create any of that. It all had to break down in order to create space in order to do what I was meant to do. But that's really uncomfortable to do. It really is.
Yeah. 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 Denial is kind of a cozy place when we're sitting in it, even though it's often uncomfortable to be in those spaces. Like you said, you were miserable, but it was probably a misery you were familiar with, which completely beats the unknown, which is, let me just change up my whole business and then start from scratch and then feel completely bizarre.
See, and it's exactly it. So our subconscious mind, we will actually, so our subconscious mind is always running the show, right? 95% of who we are, our thoughts, our beliefs, our decisions comes from our subconscious mind. And so that's our body. We will always choose what we know because it's
Yeah.
safe and familiar and predictable. And so you might set a goal that's outside of that, but if you don't change the identity and to be the person who holds that and you're in that space, then you will always retreat back to what you know. And
Yeah.
so that's the piece of it, right? Like it's like we come back to what we know and it's like, but I don't even want this. Why am I doing this? Because it's safe and predictable. That's literally why you have to change the inner story, especially if you aspire to do something you haven't done before. It's
Yeah.
not work ethic. You can't just push past it. You have to see your own blind spots. And it is not easy to see your own blind spots, but it is incredibly freeing when you do, because those blind spots are blocking you from creating what you're here to create.
Absolutely. I love, and I hear you talk quite a bit about reframing.
Mhm.
And is that, is that part of your NLP techniques, or will you kind of explain what is NLP and what's involved in that science?
100%. So NLP, neuro linguistic programming. So neuro is like I bring in all the information through my senses. L is like linguistic, that's languaging, like it's a language that I'm using, and programming and patterns. So, what I have my own set of programming and patterns. I take in the information, how I retrieve the information, and how I share it. We have different learners, we have visual, auditory, kinesthetic, auditory digital. we all have different ways of taking in our information. And then that is how we see the world. So
Yes.
this is a big internal representation is huge, right? You can have two people who have the exact same scenario, they grew up in the same house, everything is exactly the same, but they will see the world differently. That's
Absolutely.
really what NLP is, understanding that we all have our own internal way to see the world. And so, how do we change this? If we can recognize that our subconscious mind is running the show 95% of the time, then it's not just about, can I work harder to get the results that I want? You have to actually get to the root of the belief of, do I think I can actually achieve that? And if the answer is like, I see this with women all the time. They're like, I want to create this and just say numbers because it's easy. I want a 6-figure year. Okay, great. It happens tomorrow. How does that feel? Immediately, almost always, they're like, oh, not yet, not yet. And I'm like, interesting. Why did you contract and like retreat immediately? Because I'm not ready yet. Well,
Yes, I'm not ready. Yeah.
right? What will make you ready? And so that's what NLP does. We have a lot of different ways of, using therapeutic questioning to get to the root of what some of those beliefs are. We have a lot of tools and techniques to help you to release stuck emotions, stuck stories, beliefs that you can then rewire that to speak life into where you want to go versus where you've been. And then through that process, you actually train your nervous system, your subconscious mind to regulate so that it can hold more. Because if we're in this constant like freak out inner energy, like I can't hold this, this is too much responsibility, then I often say the universe can literally deliver you everything that you've asked for. You will self-sabotage it because you're not ready to receive it, to hold it. You don't feel worthy enough for it, whatever it is. And here's a very big important piece. There's zero shame with any of this. Zero. It doesn't mean you're less worthy if you aren't ready to hold this, if you aren't ready to be in those spaces. So here I thought I wanted to build a big business, built a successful business in 2022, crashed it all down in 2023, and it came back 5 times stronger in 2024. And I only say that because I also was in a much more grounded space. My nervous system was better. I felt like I could hold and support the clients. I had better boundaries. And a lot of that was by getting to the root of what those beliefs were so that I could change them. What most people do is they work at it from the conscious lens. And that means that we do our affirmations, we do our journaling, we do our vision board. All of them are good things. There's nothing wrong with any of them. But if you don't address what the actual belief is that the person has, then the gap between the belief that they have in themselves and the goal that they're setting for themselves continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it gets bigger, then subconsciously it gets really easy for the client, for ourselves to believe that I can't achieve that because I haven't yet, right? I haven't. And then we start to reaffirm that story that we tell ourselves that that's not for me. And it's not true. It's not true at all. But getting to the root of those beliefs is how you can start to change that story.
In a sense, I do a similar process with my clients. I wouldn't call it NLP, but a lot of reframing in that sense. And I've heard you talk about reframing in several of your episodes, and it reminds me of like asking basic questions like the work of Byron Katie. Like,
Mhm.
is this true? Can you
Mhm.
be absolutely certain that this is true? What happens when you believe that thought going forward on that end? And I see people running through repetitive thoughts and stories about who they are, who they think they are, who they think they have turned out to be, just like their parents. Or and it's really self-limiting in so many ways, not just about sobriety. You're talking about it from a business sense,
Mhm.
but I also know you use this technique with your clients. What kind of things are you addressing in your coaching? What kinds of issues?
I think everything you just said, we are very much universal, right? So just so everyone knows, like if you're having limiting beliefs about, can I do this? Who am I to, am I worthy to do this? How can I still like support others and take care of myself? Literally everyone's having the same limiting beliefs, and every single person is. And so I just wanted to normalize the sense that that's something that everyone is feeling. And so by using those tools and techniques that I shared with NLP, we get to like reframe a story differently, see it from a different lens. Now, this is my own personal opinion, but something that I think is important to share, because as somebody who has also experienced a lot of criticism, shame, judgment, all of those emotions, I don't believe in the reframing of this is happening for me. Personally, I don't, because
Interesting.
yeah, just personally, this is my own thing, because if you ever look at somebody who is in the middle of a very difficult situation, and this is just a languaging thing, then, and you say to them, this is happening for you. So how does that feel when you're on the receiving
Oh,
end? Like you want to punch somebody in the face, right?
absolutely.
So I don't love that languaging. I think that everything is teaching us something. I think everything is showing me something. I think everything I'm here to learn something from everything I'm walking through. And that is different. If you're telling yourself this is happening for me and it is the worst horrific example situation in your entire life, wow, that is just that's a really, there's a lot of shame encased in that. And there's not a good energy personally. So for me, reframing is that when I'm in a peak moment or I feel like I'm having a breaking point moment, that I sit there, and this is some of the things that I do with myself. And as I was sharing with you, like we just walked through a really difficult situation in our family. And I sat there and went, okay, if I would have sat there and went, this is happening for you, I know I wouldn't have had the best answer. I wouldn't have. And so instead, this is another thing that I have said to myself in reframing, in a sense that, Marsha, you know the answer. You might not like the answer, but you know the answer. I know you know what to do. And that becomes a grounded space. You're in this situation because you do know what to do. You're in this situation because you can make the difficult decisions. You see the difference in the energy, like how much more grounded and calm I can make a decision in that moment. So that is just all reframing is if you imagine you have a prism and you just turn it a little bit. How can you just see it a little bit differently? Because now, all of a sudden, when you see it differently, it opens up possibilities. And now you get to see it from a different lens. And that's when you can start to change how things happen. We've had 800 plus episodes, and I've interviewed so many people, including yourself, who have come through unbelievable stories. And there's a very common theme in everybody I got to interview, in the sense that they're looking at the work that they're doing today, the impact that they're creating, the ripple effect that they want to be a part of, the legacy that they're creating, all comes from their difficult experience that they walk through almost every single time. They have all learned how to see their story differently. They have reframed it in a sense to see that they can do something good with a very difficult experience. So I know, like, not everybody can do that. I know that not everybody can do that. And you also have to be open to seeing that at the same time. So it does come down to being able to just shift it and see it a little bit differently. But I also know there's so many people in the world who do.
Yeah, I love that you reframed it that way. And what I'm thinking of, what comes to mind is that in order to be able to say this is happening for me instead of this is happening to me, what comes to mind is distance and time. I could not have ever said that when I got the letter that said, "You're going to be in the monitoring program for nurses, and you owe thousands of dollars, and no one will hire you, and you're a piece of shit." I mean, there's no way I could have sat down and said, "Thank you, God, this is happening for me." But distance, right? And hindsight, then yes, that does come with time. Maybe it doesn't come for everybody, but most of us can take a horrible situation, distance ourselves from it, reflect back and say, I can see what that taught me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So while I'm not crazy about that, throwing that out there when someone's in the thick of it, I don't think I would ever throw that out there
Oh, I had
when
lots of
they're
people say
really
that.
in it. Oh,
Yeah.
no. No,
Yeah. I
that's
had
not,
people say that to me when I was in
no,
it. And I really like to share that, because I do think that's really toxic to say to somebody
it
who's in the
is.
middle of, and what it also does is like, this is happening for you. Now it's like, okay, so I'm supposed to be strong enough to handle this and do it on my own. So I guess I'm not going to ask for help anymore. Like that subconsciously was the message that kept happening. And so I actually don't share that to anyone right now in any way, shape, or form. Now, there are times that I think as a person like myself, I'm like you. I often look at it. Do I wish I could have learned the lessons that I've learned differently? Absolutely. Like, absolutely, I do. But I also know I would not be doing any of the work that I do in the world today without that story. And I can imagine not doing this work. I can't. Like, I can't imagine a world where I'm not doing the work that I get to do now. So for me to say, I feel like it did happen for me and it taught me things that I couldn't learn any other way is very different than me saying, Kate, that happened for you. Like that's for me to say, right? If I
Yeah.
say it to myself, very different. But I did have people who said that to me when we were in the thick of it. And I was like, okay, so this is my fault? Like that's how I couldn't comprehend it and it didn't make sense.
Yes.
So I think it can be, this is where I think languaging can be, we have to be really careful. It can be very toxic and hurtful. And it doesn't help anybody when we're in that space.
I agree 100%. When I'm working with a client and they are in a shitstorm,
Yeah.
the last thing I'm gonna say is, "Well, this is happening for you." And the other thing is I don't go to gratitude because that's another area I feel like we can shame people into telling them other stories. Like, I think I recorded an episode early on, something about, don't buy me a fucking gratitude journal, especially when I'm in the shit, because it's just one more layer of where I need to feel bad about myself. Not only am I supposed to learn something from this, I'm supposed to be grateful. Fuck
Mhm.
off, dude. I'm not grateful. You know?
So I love that you said that because I also think that this is like this toxic positivity that is exists
Ugh.
in the world. And I think it's actually like it can be very scary. And when I was in the thick of it, I was doing a lot of therapy. And I actually had somebody say to me, I had a coach say to me, you're not taking the time to write your gratitudes. And if you did that, you would change your vibration.
Sorry.
I'm listening to what I don't think you can comprehend what it's like to live in that kind of chaos until you live in that kind of chaos. You can't, and there's a reason you can't imagine it because nobody wants to. Nobody wants to. And I remember thinking, so I'm not writing my gratitudes. Do you understand like what I'm living in right now? So I actually think that's not what gratitude is either. And so I actually started to shift. I like to keep a gratitude journal. Let me just be real for a second. But I would shift it in the moment of like, okay, I got 5 minutes to myself today. I actually got a good night's sleep. I went out for a walk by myself. I did, like, I had to shift into things like that as opposed to things I was grateful for. Because if you leave it to my head to come up with something I'm grateful for when my entire life is burning to the ground, it's just, I can't connect the dots there. It doesn't make any sense. So, and interestingly enough, if it's okay if you don't write your gratitudes, like how we take in information is what do you see, feel, and hear. And so when I get into a space of like, I am like really just writing my gratitudes to check a box, I actually stop. I don't do them because they have to be an experience. And so I will practice slowing down, closing my eyes. What do I see? What do I feel? What do I hear? What can I be grateful for today that happened? Because I am not going to add gratitude to my daily checklist so that I can have like the best morning routine checklist, which means nothing if I'm not connected to it. So gratitude, that was a really toxic thing that happened in the beginning for me too, is people were like, you have to write your gratitudes. That's why you're having the problems that you're having. And I'm like, yeah, you're not my person. You're totally not my person. I'm going to bother. I don't have any, I'm just not even going to bother. You're not my person.
You you don't wanna raise your vibration? Come on.
Yeah. No, we're not going to do this. So it's, I mean, it's permission to find your own way, but don't be afraid to try a lot of different things. Like for me, I had headphones and I would listen to Tony Robbins on YouTube, not even understanding that that was NLP. That was NLP back like 13 years ago when I was listening to it. But I would listen to it because I understood that when I was paying attention to the words that I was using, I was like changing how I was seeing the world. So for me, I was always using the word stuck. And no wonder I felt stuck. It was literally the only word I said. Only word I was saying was stuck. So I was catching the words I was saying because your words are literally dictating like what you're seeing and what you're creating. The other piece of it was that it was state, understanding my state. If I could get myself into a better state, I could make a better decision. When your vibration is super low and your energy's low and your state is low, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to make a very like enlightened, empowered decision up here when everything is down here in the gutter. So changing my state is the other thing that I would do. And that might be like a walk in, just a walk multiple times a day, getting out, like just change and get out of the environment. But like it's a different beast when you are dealing with an addiction in your house and navigating it at the same time, because one of the things with it is it's unpredictable. It is. And problems don't happen between 9 and 5. Let's just be real here. How many times I was like, I be in trouble and I'm trying to call a helpline or support line. And it's like, sorry, we close at 6. And I'm like, right, because no problems ever happen like from past 6. They all happen at night. And so it was just this wild time of like trying to find answers, but at the same time, like really empowering myself that I could make decisions and how can I change my state so that I could do that work.
How did you change the thought process of I'm stuck? Because I hear that a lot with clients too. I mean, addiction is another level of stuckness, right?
Yep. Yep. First off, you have to be aware of awareness is key. Okay. So I take people, I do this and I use this all the time. This is kind of a step process to change a thought or a belief, but you still have to get to the root of where that comes from. But with stuck, I had to have awareness for how often I was saying it. And I actually remember one point took like 30 minutes and just wrote down like little stick marks of how often. I mean, I didn't even finish 30 minutes because I'm like, I don't even have like it's dozens and dozens of times. I've said the word, I've thought it, I felt it. So no wonder I feel that. Okay. So then is it true? The second question is always, is it true? And Byron Katie, but is it
Go
true?
Byron. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it true? Is it actually true? And it's like, well, am I stuck? Well, I'm stuck in a lot of my situation right now, but I also, am I stuck? No, I'm not a tree. I can move, I can get up, I can do things, I can do. Okay. So then the third thing that I do is I look for evidence of the opposite. Where has there been time in my past where I have actually, overcome something? I've maybe felt this exact same thing and I've actually made a change. Where is there evidence in my past that that's actually not true? And I literally start stacking the evidence and stack the wins. I'm like, okay, I did it there, I did it there, okay, I've done it lots of times. All right, so I've got that proof. How can I rewrite it in a new empowering way? And then I use subconscious reprogramming to reinforce that new belief. So to rewrite it in a new empowering way, if I can give an example, I felt very stuck in every aspect of my life. My kids were minors. Okay. So we were dealing with, there was very little that I could do at this time. And so I recognized how often I was saying stuck. Am I actually stuck? No, I'm actually not stuck. All right. Well, where's there evidence of things that I've done? I'd stack the wins. For me, one of the turning points was to rewrite it as a new empowered belief. Is that my choice? I'm like, no, that's not my choice. That's not my choice. That's not my choice. Where's my choice in all this? And it's very interesting because I was in a space of owning everyone else's choices, trying to fix, manage, and control life around me. But what would happen is I had nothing left for me at the end of the day because I was trying to literally predict and manage and sort through everything before getting to me, which of course there's nothing left for me at the end of the day. So then I started to write it and it's like, rewrite it. And it's like, that's not my choice. That's not my choice. Okay, well, where's my choice? Marsha, where's your choice? What are you doing for you? And I would start to do that. And then also that would mean that I had many times my response with my kids was, well, that's not my choice. That was your choice. That's the consequences of your choice. Not shaming them because that doesn't work either. We don't shame people to create change. There's no human that actually makes change when you shame them. That doesn't work. And so it'd be like, that's not my choice. That's not my choice. Where's my choice? And so the beautiful thing that happens when you do this is like two people can't own a decision, right? Like when you all of a sudden let go and let someone else own their own choices, then they're going to have the consequences of their choice. And then you're going to be in a space of making your own choices. So that's the process that I went through to be able to rewrite stuck and see it differently. And it also became my radar so that when I saw or heard myself say stuck, I'm like, oh, I'm not stuck actually. That's not true. That's actually not true. So how can I rewrite that differently? And just that awareness over and over. And eventually over time with a lot of repetitions, right? We have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, 80 to 90% we repeat every single day. And 90% of those are negative. That's before the world gets me. That's just me. I do that to me. You do that to you. And so when we recognize that, you start to rewrite a belief and it feels good, and I'm like changing different languaging and I'm reframing it, you just have to also accept that you're going to be doing it lots of times and lots of reps because we have a lot of thoughts a day.
I say that same thing to clients. Like we have 60 to 90,000 thoughts. But I mean, it's interesting. Most on repeat, and
Yep.
most of them are negative. And so, one area we talk about is increased levels of consciousness with sobriety. The fact that you are aware of your own thinking. You
Mm,
can think about your thinking. And so you can stop yourself, but it does take some intention, and it takes some guiding. And I think
mhm,
that's where coaching comes in. I have a tendency to do a little bit more on that end farther along on the journey. But I came across that realization that I told myself on repeat that I was fumbling. I'm
mm,
fumbling at work in the bedroom. I'm fumbling with this. I'm fumbling with my microphone. I even say it on my podcast to my guests. Oh, I'm fumbling. I'm fumbling with my words. It's like, what message am I sending to myself that I'm this fumbly, bumbly, disorganized? you know, and it's like, oh my God, I got to catch myself and quit freaking saying that.
I love your honesty and I so appreciate it. And I think that we all have that. Just so like anyone listening, we all have that. Like we have something that we say to ourselves that if we stop and actually say it out loud, it's like, oh my God, that's not true. Like that's not true. I don't want to, and that's not the message that I want to reinforce. So even there, right? Like I have so many people that are afraid to start posting. They're afraid to allow themselves to be seen. What are people going to think? What are they going to say? It's like, are you actually afraid, or what is underneath that message? Like, what is it that is underneath that message? Are you afraid that it's not going to look perfect? Are you afraid it's not going to, like, what is it? What is it? And so we get to the root of what that is and really start to see that. But that awareness and recognizing, right? The language that you're speaking to yourself, like it's, oh, would I actually say this to like someone I love? Would I let someone else say this to me? No, then don't say it to yourself. Like we are by far, I think this is interesting because most people are afraid of what others are going to say to them. But really, at the end of the day, the biggest critic we ever walk with is ourselves. It is 100% ourselves. And so that's the relationship we always have to repair.
This conversation, I feel like so much of the work you do with people in what sounds like helping them build businesses, coach, tell their stories, speak,
Mhm,
train others. I mean, so much of that relates to the business I do just because it's around human behavior. It's around our own thoughts that sabotage. So many times I talk to people who are stuck in thought loops. They have so many limiting beliefs that
mhm,
it's like if we just stop for a second and step back.
mhm,
First of all, none of that's true, but
mhm.
it's very human of us to go through these things, and so I'm glad that we got a chance to talk about that. What else is interesting in your work right now that you think would be relevant? This is me being not as experienced of a podcaster, punting to you saying, "What else are we gonna talk about, Marsha?"
Oh, I think that, you know what? Sometimes we can start with this is a great question. Here's a question that I ask people all the time. Is like, what's the one thing you wish you could share with others that like if you that you wish you could be more honest and authentic about? And all of a sudden it starts to open up like what is the piece I'm holding on to? What's the story I'm holding on to? What's the thing that's underneath all of it? Because the more like the reason half of those beliefs and thoughts have so much power is because we give them power, right? Like shame loves secrecy, it loves silence, it loves all those things. So I often say, like, what's the thing that you wish you could share with others and put that out there? And all of a sudden, people start to open up with like, oh, okay, well, it's like this or that. I'm afraid people are going to find out that I don't know everything. I'm afraid that people are going to find out that I fumble. Like, I'm only laughing because I say those things. I say things like that all the time and I catch myself. And even there, it's like, well, I'm still new. I'm still learning. This is amazing. Like, and I'm not quitting, right? Like, it's even that is different in reframing that from fumbling to like, I'm still learning. And I think that the world needs this perfect version of us. Like, we have to do it a certain way, and we don't. It's actually like the least relatable thing is trying to be perfect. It's not attainable. Nobody does it. So it's like trying to shoot for something, a goal you will never reach, is not attainable and is not relatable at all. So that's the first thing that comes up for me is like, how can you allow yourself like to be more authentic? And what's the story you wish people knew more about you? For me, it was like I spent so long thinking that I was the only person in the world who was struggling. I mean, it's kind of wild, but at that time, that was 13 years ago, online was just kind of really starting. And everywhere I went, everyone was saying, like there must be something wrong. Like, why are we struggling with this problem? And dealing with teen substance abuse made no sense. And no one else was talking about it. So, in my naivety, I thought I was the only parent who had this challenge. And I know it sounds so crazy, but if we don't start talking about things like this, that's what happens. People feel like they're the only person who is struggling. And that's not true. Like, it's not true. We are so much more connected by our stories than what we think.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I spend a lot of time talking to people, just normalizing what they're going through and making sure they know they're not the only one. You know,
Mhm.
what I mean, I really like that as a way to piece this together. So much of the time we think we're out on an island and that we're the only one struggling with whatever it is. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes I think I'm the only one struggling to record a podcast. But, I work with clients every day who think they're the only mom on the block that's struggling with their drinking, or they're the only mom in the pickup line whose kid has a drug or alcohol problem. And none of that is true.
Say it's not. And so how can you get out of yourself to be able to find like where there might be more of you? So a counselor recommended to me years ago, can you join a Facebook group? I'm like, what do you mean a Facebook group? Like I didn't even understand. And so I went into the Facebook groups and I mean the first time I searched like parents with teen substance abuse. First group I found, 100,000 moms 13 years ago. I literally sat there, I'm like, "What? How is that possible?" And then I spent, I mean, be very mindful of your energy too. I couldn't stay in that space. It was very hard because we didn't go through a day without somebody losing a child. It was a very heavy space, right? In 100,000 moms, it's gonna happen. But I remember having this moment of like, "Oh my gosh, like, it isn't just me at all." And so that became a little bit of a I don't know, let's say the cracked open moment because it became a moment of like, maybe it's not just me. Like maybe it isn't just me. And so I started to be in that space of, sharing it. And I mean, every time I openly shared my story in a talk on stage or in a podcast episode or wherever it was, someone would reach out to me and say, "That's my story. I've never told a soul." Like we used to have when I first started speaking, that we had this little code word where someone would come into the washroom and get me because these are shame stories. I would finish my talk. I would go into the bathroom just to kind of give myself some space from, because I'm an introvert and putting yourself out there is always alive. And I come in and I would get like almost pigeonholed in the washroom by women who would come in and say, "Oh my God, that's my story. And I've never told anyone. Like I've never told a soul." And I thought, what is wrong here? We've got women holding on to stories for decades or their entire life. No wonder we have so much trapped trauma because we won't talk about these things. And so, but I say that because I had to be in a space of starting to see that I wasn't the only one who was struggling, like not even close. Not even, there were so many of me. And that started to normalize this feeling like I wasn't alone. And when you feel like you're alone in your story, that's a time that you want to get outside of yourself and find other people, other places to connect. We actually even my husband and I went to an in person parent support group for dealing with teens. And I'll never forget walking the room and he's like, I'm not going to go in. There's no one going to be there. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, I'm just asking for one night. I need you to come with me to see. We walked in that room. It was standing room only. Again, 13 years ago, standing room only, probably 30 plus parents in that room on a Tuesday night in one area of our city of 300,000. And that was a moment of like, okay, there's a lot of us. And I think when we start to realize that, like, we are so much more alike than different. We really, really are. And you might have to step outside of your comfort zone to find those people. But once you do, it'll really open up your eyes that there are more and more people who are walking through something that you think you're the only person and you're not.
I hope that is a take-home message, for the day. So I'd love to close on that because, I mean, I want people to carry that with them always, during the hardest times. You're so not alone.
As you do that, if you're listening and this speaks to you, your support will most likely come from people that you don't expect it to come from. And it might never come from the people you expect it to come from. That's why I think it's really powerful to learn how to, use your voice, allow yourself to reach out and ask for help. Because again, that's vulnerability, right? Like that's the piece of vulnerability. The people who are in my life today are here because I shared a message when it was scary. And so often when I'm like, oh my God, can I do this? And I'm like, well, who is in my life today because of vulnerability? And it's like literally everyone, literally. So to me, that's the reminder that like that there's beautiful connections on the other side of that.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, for sure. The some of the time, most of the time, your support is going to come from people complete strangers,
Mm-hmm.
complete strangers, especially in the sobriety space.
Mm-hmm.
Complete strangers on the internet will save your ass. I'm telling you.
I actually can say that is 100% true. I mean, some of my
Yeah,
close friends now I met through this process.
of course. I always say my closest friends are either anonymous or they live in my computer.
I love that. I love that.
So where can people find you, Marsha?
You can find me anywhere online under Marsha Vanwynsberghe because my last name is very long. So if you just go VNW, that's my website, that's my Instagram, and my podcast is called Own Your Choices, Own Your Life.
Well, I'll put all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. You can find me on my website at katevitella.com. You can also connect with me on Instagram at katevitella. I would love to hear from you. Any feedback or questions, shoot me a note. So until next time, peace within and bullshit out.